Our Father and our God, we thank you for this evening's workshop. We pray for the presenters that all will go according to plan. Be with the attendees. May the questions be answered accordingly, that they will be able to cope with their children. Be with us at this time, Lord. We thank you. May our devices work as well. We love you. We say thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Mrs. Bailey. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very important event as we mark Autism Awareness Month. Michael University College Child Care Research in Education Center, which is Michael Care, is on a mission to respond to the needs of children with autism as well as their families. We have been listening to you, our valued stakeholders, not only in Jamaica, but across the Caribbean region. And we want you to know that we're building our own capacity to respond to the various needs. Last week, the Special Education Department at Michael hosted a two-day regional conversation on autism. And today, the Michael Care Center hosts its third parent coaching session since 2022. The previous sessions have been engaging and informative, and we know that this is just the beginning of greater things to come. It is on that note that I welcome you to this session aimed at providing parents an opportunity to have their questions answered. So welcome to you all, and an extra special welcome to our partner, Caribbean Support for Autism, for Caribbean Support for, and I missed something, education, headed by Mrs. Deborah Santiago. She joins us with a team, Miss Margie Rennert, who's a speech language pathologist, and Mrs. Jeanette Guzman Davis, who's an occupational therapist. And they will be introduced to you shortly. Welcome to parents, teachers, educators, colleagues in Jamaica as well as other territories. We are thrilled to have you, and we look forward to a fulfilling evening. As we continue to bring more resources to families, ladies and gentlemen, I now have the distinguished pleasure of launching our latest publication, an autism guide for parents, practical approaches to working with your child. And I'm hearing the drum roll in the background. This publication represents the combined efforts of our wonderful partners and autism experts who have presented in these workshops. This publication will provide us with rich resources, strategies to help parents to navigate the stereotypical behaviors that have come to be associated with autism. We would like to specially acknowledge our partners, Hospitan Jamaica Limited, who has generously funded this project. Hospitan is a privately owned hospital in Montego Bay, St. James, and they have a particular interest in providing services to children with autism. This booklet is intended to be a reference guide for parents and caregivers, providing practical tips and strategies on what to do before diagnosis and how to manage all the behaviors that your child may display. Also included in this guide are resources for parents and caregivers, which will provide additional support. The booklet will be available in electronic format and will also have a limited number of printed copies. The electronic version will be put into circulation within the coming weeks, and as a special treat for you all being here today, it will be emailed to you, so please look out for it. Again, thanks to Hospital Jamaica Limited for their generous support, and I'm hoping we're showing them some appreciation in the chat. And welcome to one and all, and do have a life-changing evening.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pleasure that I introduce the panelists of experts for tonight's question and answer session. The first panelist is Mrs. Deborah Santiago, who is the founder of Caribbean Autism Support for Education, CASE, a nonprofit organization with a mission to support teachers, students, and families with autism strategies in education. Mrs. Santiago is an autism coach in the Broward County Public School District in Florida. In addition to supporting teachers and students in the self-contained special education classes, Mrs. Santiago works with students with autism in the inclusive setting of the school at all grade levels. She also works closely with families of her students while partnering with community support groups to educate teachers, educational assistants, and families on strategies and best practices for students with autism. Mrs. Jeanette Guzman Davis graduated from Florida International University, completing her bachelor's in psychology and receiving a master's degree in occupational therapy from Nova Southeastern University. She has worked in pediatrics since graduating. She has experience in outpatient pediatrics and early intervention programs in schools. She has a passion for helping children and families to be able to participate in everyday activities, especially in sensory processing. She has completed multiple continuing education courses in handwriting, sensory processing, executive function, and social and behavior techniques. Our third panelist is Miss Marlee Reneret, who is a speech and language pathologist who was born and raised in Miami Beach, Florida. She received her undergraduate degree from the University of Florida and her master's degree from Florida International University. She immediately began working with elementary age children, both in the school setting and in private practice. She has experience with early intervention, autism spectrum disorder, Down syndrome, expressive and receptive language disorders, attention deficit disorder, pragmatics, and fluency. I hope you are prepared with your questions, your writing instruments, and your notepad. As I call for our moderator, I would just like to wish you all a pleasant
Well, good
evening.
afternoon. Good afternoon, all, and we're absolutely excited to have you with us today. We are especially excited to hear from Mrs. Santiago and Mrs. Guzman Davis and Ms. Rennet. All right, and we're really looking forward to all the wonderful information that will be shared with us today. And certainly our participants, we're really happy to have you as well. All right, so just a little housekeeping before we begin. So first, I want to remind you that the Google Forms are being circulated and will be circulated at intervals during the chat. So please remember to complete them so that you will be able to have the opportunity to have the wonderful resources that we have lined up for you sent to your emails, all right? Now, the second thing I want to look at are just some basic rules. So let's look at rule number 1. So we want to agree that as participants, we're going to take control of our own noise, all right? What does that mean? It means that you are going to make sure, we are going to make sure, I'm going to make sure, right? That our microphones are muted when we are not speaking. Number 2, we want to make sure that we give everyone an opportunity to ask questions, all right? Or everyone who wishes to ask questions, we want to give them the opportunity to. So what does that mean? It means that each participant will be allowed a total of 2 questions, all right? So we're not going to go over that. Certainly, if we have a lull, a period where individuals are thinking and, the space is a little quiet, feel free to raise your hand so that, and indicate to us a desire to communicate with us or to ask a question rather. All right, so let's get into the meat of the matter. So we know that social and communication challenges are a core part of the challenges that children with autism face. All right, and so I want to start out the discussion today by talking a little bit or raising some questions that relates to that. And certainly, after I'm finished with this segment, you can feel free to raise your hands and to indicate your interest in asking questions. All right, so let's start with Deborah. Is that fine, Deborah? Can we go?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so as we think about children who have nonverbal communication issues, what are some ways that we can support these children?
All right, so I'm just going to share with you, as we work as a team. So myself, Ms. Renner, and Ms. Guzman Davis do work as a team. So we're going to be talking freely because I'm going to give like the education perspective. Ms. Renert is going to give the speech and language perspective. So we're all going to kind of jump in to get more than one answer. So as an education perspective, you're talking about children with nonverbals. Everything we do in our classroom setup is visually based. So because it is visually based, and because we know through studies that our students think in pictures, they understand visuals, even before they understand words. It's just easier, it's quicker, it's something that's direct. That will help them with their communication, with their behaviors. So in a classroom perspective, everything is done with visuals. We have visual schedules. We have, so they know what is expected of them within the classroom, where they're going. Give me a question again, say it one more time. How does it help the nonverbal child?
Yes, essentially.
Yes, so it helps a nonverbal child because they don't have the voice yet to speak, but they certainly know what their wants or needs are. They can request things they need. So even with a parent, even at home with a parent, if they don't have a voice, but they have pictures of the child, things that the child needs, they are able to get it and give it to the child, or even even using real things at home. Miss Marley, Miss Renner, you can jump in anytime.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and tell you, similarly to having the images in the classroom or the school or preschool setting, you want to try to have those same images at home so that the child can carry over from home to school and school to home. So if they're using a visual schedule at school, that visual schedule should be the same at home. So they can look at the pictures at home and say, oh, I've seen this before. I know that this is also at school.
Wonderful. So we're looking at a collaborative approach, right? Thank you so much. Absolutely appreciate it.
And also, not only like the schedule, but it's important for the child's needs to be met. So we have like pictures of where they can present the pictures, besides only schedule, but presenting the pictures to parents that say, I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, I need to use the bathroom. So functional pictures that they can use even at home. So that's one way to start with a child who's nonverbal at home, even if the parents don't have like pictures that I'm showing you here or computerized pictures, they can take photos at home. And the photographs can be put around the house, so put on the fridge.
Or even images that are things they use every day. So let's say a child only eats a specific cookie. You want to ensure that you have a picture of that cookie so that they're able to ask you for it, not just grab your hand and walk you there, but go and grab their picture and give it to the adult in the house, and then they're able to communicate that way. Or if they like a certain toy, you want to ensure that you have that image so that they're able to request that.
Wonderful.
I just that would be the basics. I mean, it's built, that's pictures starting with the big basics, maybe for the younger child. However, as the children are getting older and they're still, if they're still nonverbal while they're getting older, there are other techniques and other ways to find their voice, right? So, you know, you can get into more higher forms of way, like iPads, where they can talk through it, or voice output devices. So as they get older and as their communication increases and their comprehension really increases, they can go from pictures to devices that help them to speak.
Right. So the technology will go from like a low tech image, like we're speaking of, to a low technology, such as maybe 1 or 2 buttons, and then all the way up to maybe an iPad with many buttons.
Wonderful. So I'm going to ask Jeanette to just jump in now. I see that you've been trying to go. So
no, I know. I think Ms. Santiago, Ms. Renner touched on it beautifully. And I think it's important to reiterate that consistency from the school to the home is really important. And you'll start to see that the child will start to use those visuals. And at one point, even providing them with 2 choices when they get more advanced, where they can actually pick, because they're nonverbal, they can pick the difference between the choices. So just being very consistent from the school and the home. And I think you'll see a great improvement in the kids, and they won't become frustrated because they can communicate in that manner.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, so wonderful participants, I invite you now to go ahead and raise your hands or type your questions in the chat if you have questions, okay? All right, so let's look at this one. So we know that children with autism tend to have challenges in terms of understanding emotions or identifying emotions. How can parents help children to be able to learn to identify emotions, and why is this so important?
Yoga.
Well, again, everything is taught. In the education, we teach everything. So we teach even the emotions, and they're actually specific curriculum that teaches emotions. So you could jot these down. There's something called zones of regulations, which is a curriculum that can be ordered online, really, and that really helps teachers and parents how to use visuals, again, to teach emotions. We use that in our school. We all actually have like the pictures of the different zones that they call, like green zone is the happy zone. Let me see if I have visual of any of that. If I have that right here. I have some visuals here. You have the green zone, the blue zone. It talks about the different kinds of emotions. And from there, very young, but sometimes preschool, but definitely from the kindergarten level, we teach the children what the emotions look like. We have pictures of the emotions, and every morning they come in, they actually will select, where are you today? What zone are you in? And if they, in our schools, we have like a clip up thing where they have green, we're happy, or yellow, they're tired, or red, they're angry. It has the different colors that go with them. And then we try and get them to express. If they are verbal, we try and get them to express, why are you feeling this way? But emotions for our students has to be taught so that they can understand what the emotions are, because they usually have happy and mad. But so it's a discussion and it's a lesson that we talk about every day, and we talk about it, and what will cause you to feel that, or why something should, why sometimes they'll be read about things that they should be not so upset about, like the pencil broke or something that's very simple. So then it's almost a lesson on kind of size of emotions. I've done lessons on what the size of the emotion is. That a small thing? Is that a medium thing? Is that a big thing? But all these things, because they don't come naturally to our students, understanding emotions doesn't come naturally. It is a lesson. It is teaching them. So we teach them in the school, but it's also, again, carried through with the families.
Yeah, and Ms. Santiago, to piggyback on that, the zones of regulation is currently the best way for us to teach those emotions, because it works for both those nonverbal and verbal students. The nonverbal students can point or can take the, let's say if they're cut into squares, take the specific color that they're feeling. They might not be able to explain their feeling, but they can tell us at least which zone they're in. And the verbal students, will be able to choose their zone and then tell you, I'm feeling sad because, or I'm in the blue zone because, and throughout the day, they might change their zones. So it's a good thing to have this printed out so the children can go to it and say, actually, like I was in the red zone when I got to school, but now I'm in the green zone.
Wonderful. So I'm going to go to the chat and look at a few questions that have been coming in. All right, so I see where Andre mentions that his niece sometimes goes silent. All right, and he says that he has an issue, or issue that he has is that she does not stay focused and she has potty training challenges. So let's look at the going silent first. All right, so can I touch on, let's look at Marley, is that fine? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Why?
Yeah, so this all depends on, a variety of things. This isn't just about the nonverbal or the going silent. It's how that child is feeling that day. What affected that child to become silent. Does it always happen in the same situation? Is she always silent when it's time to go to school or when it's time to do her homework? I think that the first most important thing is to pinpoint when this occurs and if it's occurring during the same situation throughout.
There's a lot of observation that has to, as a parent or as a teacher, there's a lot of observation of the child that you have to, you have to see. You have to see if there's a pattern. If he says the child goes silent, when, what, where, why, what time, is it always the same, like Marty said? Because a lot of times it could be the situation, the setting that's causing it.
The noise level.
Yeah.
I totally agree with Ms. Renard or Ms. Santiago when you had mentioned the first question with behavior. And if the child is staying silent, it's identifying consistently why is that happening. And also with regards to that, they might have a meltdown after that. So you have to see if that's happening consistently, how to maybe the parents can address that prior to it happening. If the parent is seeing a pattern and they say, okay, this happens at this particular time and this is how the child reacts, what can the parent do prior to that so we don't have that situation? So there's a lot of unknowns there, and just observing the child, looking at the time, Ms. Marley mentioned, Ms. Renner mentioned, if it's loud, if it's something that may be causing anxiety, what exactly is happening? So I don't know if that's associated with the bathroom or not, or if those are two different areas.
Okay, wonderful. So essentially every behavior serves a function. So I think that's definitely a takeaway as well. Excellent. Thank you so much. So while we're on the topic of every behavior having a function, let me just squeeze this one in a little bit now. So echolalia. Does echolalia have a function?
I don't give Marley the speech one.
It's really dependent per student. Every situation is different. We can't say for sure, yes. It could be, that this is how the child processes. And when they're 2 years old, they may be echolalic. And, by the time they're 3, they've gathered all of their vocabulary and they've created a larger vocabulary. It could be a processing situation where maybe they're not really processing what you're saying, so they're just repeating what they're hearing. But it's still exposure, and it's still having those children use their voice and say their words. So we don't want to say echolalia is necessarily bad, but we do want to work with it and work with each child who shows echolalia.
Okay, wonderful. Now, as a parent, so we know in Jamaica, the resources are very sparse. Are there any, practical tips or strategies that you could give to parents who have children who exhibit echolalia? What are some things that we can do at home to help, or in the classroom for that matter?
So we can rephrase the way that we're asking a question. For example, if a parent maybe says, "What do you want to eat?" and a child just responds, "What do you want to eat?" You can rephrase that question by giving them 2 different options. Do you want to eat chips or do you want to eat apple? And maybe even showing them, like, that goes back to the visuals. Maybe just using our words and saying it isn't enough for this child. So using a visual of the 2 different foods could maybe help with that echolalia.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, so let's look at Gina's question. So Gina indicated that her daughter only uses the bathroom at home. And so she apparently has challenges transitioning that skill to the classroom environment or to the school environment. What is something that Gina can do or possibly do, or Gina's daughter's teacher, what is something that they can do collaboratively to allow these skills to be transferred in the school environment?
You good, Ms. Guzman.
Well, I've worked with a few children with this issue. In the school that I'm in, not in Ms. Santiago's school, actually both of the schools, the flushing is extremely loud. So it can get very overwhelming for them from a sensory. It's really, it really makes them anxious. So I've provided social stories. We've also done things with providing headphones, or maybe just having them go to the bathroom and not flushing the toilet. Because it is really loud. It's even overwhelming for me sometimes. That sound is very loud, which I'm sure at the home they're not getting that sound. Also, the room might be a little louder than what they're used to, but I think primarily it's because of the flushing of the toilet is so loud. What I found in the children that I've worked with.
So a form of sensory overload, you would say?
Yes, that it's too loud, and the information is the loudness is overwhelming for them. And you'll see children in a cafeteria where it's very loud get upset as well. So it's just working with those children. I provide a sensory story with regards to going to the bathroom, or I have the teacher not flush the toilet, that it's okay, they don't have to flush the toilet. And sometimes they can even wash their hands outside of the bathroom because there's another sink. So those are the things that we try to put in place for the child not to be so overwhelmed. And also providing encouragement, every step that they take, rewarding them. It could be a little sticker, every step that they take to go into the bathroom, providing a visual reward with little stickers, or a visual saying, I'm working for this, based on every time they even make a slight movement to go into the bathroom.
I'm going to piggyback off of that, because some people may or may not know what a social story is. So Ms. Guzman Davis talked about it. And for those of you who don't know what it is, it's just a story that it prepares a child for any situation that might be uncomfortable for them. So it's like there's a pattern to it. There is a kind of like a way it's written, and you could actually look up for social stories, Google it. It's a whole social story TM. There's a whole author behind them. When we write it, we call, I call them a social narrative, not to use her term, but it really is just a story that prepares a child for that situation that they might be scared of. Like when I go to school, sometimes I have to use the bathroom. The bathroom might be loud, but it is okay. My teacher will give me headphones. It's like a little story that prepares them for that situation that they may not like. Or like, if they're going to the dentist, you could write them, today I'm going to visit the dentist. He will look in my mouth. He will clean my teeth. It's stories to prepare them for these transitions or situations that might be new to them, that will help them with unknown. Because, the unknown for our students is very scary. So things that, like I say, other children wouldn't be uncomfortable about, like about going to the bathroom at school. Some of our kids would. So it could be the noise, or it could be in the strange place. So that's what, when she refers to social story, in case some people didn't know, I just wanted to give a little brief explanation of what it is.
And I do appreciate that, because that was definitely going to be a follow-up question. Excellent.
Here's a
really do appreciate that.
Here's have some samples here. Here's a little sample. I have samples. Like, it's a social story could be written for really anything in the school or at home that the child is uncomfortable with, an uncomfortable social situation.
So is that something that a parent could just make up?
A parent could make it up in a simple form, but what I would say to the parent is, I would say, look up social stories, and to get an idea of the that would say like the rhythm of it, or to get the idea of how it's done, because it kind of explains sometimes we use it to, like, for behaviors. Like if I have a child who's always shouting out in class, so I'd write a social story for this child, shouting out why it's not appropriate. Sometimes, it would be something like, I'm going to go off the top of, sometimes in class, I would like to answer the teacher. I shout out to the teacher. When I do that, it disturbs my friends. So it's like, this is what I do. This is what it does to the other people, and then it explains why you should do it in the appropriate way. So there's like a kind of like a rhythm to it. However, if I had to say, if you didn't have the rhythm and you didn't know what it is, it's really a simple story to explain to the child either a situation that they're going to come into that they're not familiar with, or something that you might want to change, like something that's happening that you might want them to do more appropriately.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. You both did such an excellent job with that. Thank you. All right, so let's look at Clayton. So Clayton is asking, so he said, is it normal for autistic children to know the alphabet A to Z and not be able to reproduce any of the sounds, even with constant exposure? So tell me about that, and I'll add to that. Is it normal for children with autism to be able to read, to be able to name words excellently,
Yes,
and not be able to understand what it is that those words mean? So can we, let's talk about, let's include those in the conversation. Excellent question as well, Clayton. Thank you.
Although
Thank
that
you.
all of us can jump into this one. We do find that our students with autism can sometimes read very much higher than their grade level. However, because of that processing, and jump in, Marley, just because of the processing in the brain, how their brain is wired, with that deficiency in the language processing, that is part of the comprehension part. So is it usually normal? We do see that it is normal with many of our kids, that their comprehension doesn't necessarily match their reading ability. So many of them can read word call and read words, but when you're asking them, why do you think he did that? Why do you think the boy threw that ball over there? They can't go on, Mari.
Absolutely, you're right. It's all about the comprehension. I mean, they may even be able to sing their whole ABC song, and then you point to a letter and ask them what letter, and they may not identify that letter. We just have to keep exposing them to this and keep, practice and practice and practice and exposure to get them to produce, those words and sounds.
But for the comprehension, what we do in the schools, and I have visuals, is like for the comprehension piece, when the teacher is meeting with them in groups or meeting with them in a small group or one-on-one, because they may have difficulty with the who, the what, the where, where, there's actually many of our teachers use the visual. So when you're asking like who took the treasure out of whatever the question, and they might be like who, there's a visual for who being a person, where, because some of these words, who, what, where, when, some are easier than others. So the visual again helps with identifying the kind of response we're looking for. So
absolutely. And if you don't have visuals, it can be something as simple as color coding. So every time that child needs to answer a what question, maybe in the small story that they read or the excerpt, all of their what questions are always underlined in red, or all of their who questions are always underlined in green. And so while they're still trying to independently respond, first we'll give them some cues and prompting in order for them to understand. So if the story is about a dog and the question is, what animal is the story about? You can have either the parent or the teacher underline the what answer in red. So you'll underline dog in red, and then they're associating the word and the color. So they might not actually comprehend what the answer is, but they are putting the association together through the color.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this one is for Jeanette. I like her name. It sounds very French. Is it French?
It's French, but I'm not French.
All right. So you're an occupational therapist. Yes. And here we are, we're talking about language, speech and language and communication challenges that children with autism face, or individuals with autism face. Now, what is the relationship really between occupational therapy or the therapy that you provide? How does that help with communication skills or developing the same?
I was going to mention, as an example, with the last question on sounding out letters, so what we work with everyday activities, and occupational therapy is very vast. I don't know what happened here. My screen got very, very big. So occupational therapy is very vast. There's a lot of different areas. There's fine motor, there's gross motor, there's executive functioning, there's sensory. So as an example, for instance, with the question with regards to the letters and sounding the letters, when we work with handwriting, we have kids that can read above their grade level, but they cannot write a letter. They cannot write a letter. So as an example, that would be maybe something they can read, or they identify their letters, but they can't identify the sounds of those letters. And maybe they can identify the letter, but they can't say the letter. So we incorporate sensory motor into helping them with those letters, although we don't get involved with the sound, but we always like reinforce it with, let's say, an apple. If we have an apple and we bring that into with the letter. So, but we also work with that with fine motor. So that can get involved with learning to write the letter and playing with foam or sand to create the shape of the letter. So occupational therapy is very, very vast. So I'm not sure I answered your question, but we have a component. You can give me any topic and we can give you a specific area of how we handle that situation from occupational therapy, because it's so vast.
You did a great job. Thank you. Thank you for that. A question, just picking up on that, considering that we're still talking about the alphabet. So I noticed that Andre posted, he said that his daughter, and I'm assuming it's your daughter, right, Andre? She knows the alphabet, but she mostly hums it. So, you know, based on my experience, and I mean, parents, when it comes down to testing situations or situations where children are required to demonstrate knowledge, we get very anxious. And especially when we're saying, oh, I know that he knows it, I know that she knows it. How do we deal with these situations in a classroom setting? Deborah, have you ever experienced this?
With humming the alphabet?
In terms of children being able to demonstrate their learning or demonstrating yes. What they know, demonstrate what they know.
Yes, you find that with our students, especially in our students in the self-contained classroom, you really have to, the teachers are really charged with a very big, something very big, because they have to teach to sometimes the child's learning style. And so within a classroom, and the way we have it set up within our classrooms is not even one grade level that's within our autism classroom. So it's more than one grade level. At the very least it's 2, sometimes it's 3. But we try to keep it to at least 2. So yeah, the teacher is charged with children maybe a 2nd and 3rd grade level. And within that, the children are at different levels. And there are children that require special curriculum. So there's different kinds of curriculum. So there's something called SMILE, which is a curriculum which we use a lot with our children who are partially verbal or nonverbal. And it really does, it uses a multifaceted approach to learning. So they're using actions, they're using sounds, they're using repetition. They actually don't use letters, but they use sounds. So they don't teach, this is a B, they teach B. They don't teach, this is an I, they teach A. But it's a specific curriculum that the teacher has to be trained in. And then my part of supporting the teacher is like saying, would be saying, with these 2 students here, they are ideal for this curriculum. So sometimes the curriculum is very specific. And I mean, and I realize that we being Caribbean, that is a place that we're going to have to get to, because it's not a one-size-fits-all curriculum. And it's not necessarily the traditional curriculum of how we learn. Is B's, but remember now our students don't learn like how we learn, and they don't process the way we process. So we have to match the curriculum to the child, and it's a whole team effort. So today I sat in for a teacher because she was in a meeting, and so while she was in her meeting, I went in and I was calling groups. And when I called one group, I looked, okay, I know them. Luckily, I know all of them. So I said, okay, for this, I'm going to use this one, and that with a group of 2 children, we were doing matching. And when they were matching the pictures, they were both partially verbal, one nonverbal, but I was having them see the sound of the beginning of the picture. And by the way, smartly, they did so well. I was so proud of them because these are children who were nonverbal, but going buh for balloon or duh for duck, which a year ago they couldn't say buh and they couldn't say duh, but now they're saying buh for balloon. And so it's like the measurement of the growth is going to be slow, but you're going to have to celebrate the measurement and you're going to have to match the curriculum to the child. And so that is where hopefully in the future KISS can help more within the schools and things, because it really is not a one-size-fits-all curriculum, and it's going to depend on where the child is. Some children will be able to come in and be able to have like a regular curriculum with tweaks, with some visuals, but other children it's going to require a lot more, and it's going to may require a specific curriculum other than traditional curriculum.
And Ms. Santiago, to go on with what you were saying, we do want to celebrate the small victories. So maybe your child isn't saying the full word, but they're saying the initial sound, and that's something. So we want to give a lot of positive reinforcement for that, because they're doing it. They are trying and they are making the sound, and that's more than nothing.
And if they're saying the sound, it's very possible that the word is going to come. And some of the children that I'm now here saying the sound, they are 7 years old. So it's not that they're 3 or 4. It's taken 7 years to get the sounds, but now they're saying it and they're understanding it. And the growth is very slow if you're considering that they're 7. But if you consider that they have no sounds for many years, they're getting there. There's one other thing that reminded that I wanted to say, and I lost my thought, but hopefully we'll come back. I'll see. But that's it. The curriculum. Sometimes we have to match the curriculum to the child. I'll tell my teachers always, expose your children to everything. So when they're reading stories. They're reading regular read aloud stories and talking about stories, constantly exposing them. However, also meeting their needs, because one might be here and one might be here. So you can't expect this child to. So you're going to expose them to it, but then you're going to get to the level of the child and you're going to work at that level. And if that means they're reading 2-word books and pointing to 2 words and pointing to the picture, or 3 words, the boy runs, where's the boy? Show me the boy. And they're pointing to the boy, that's where they're at. One more thing, I know what I was going to say about the humming and the singing.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of our students, I have to share the success stories, who preschool, she's in the early intervention class. So she's 5, just about turning 5, and had no words, 0.
Not even a hum. Nothing.
Not even a hum. The other day they were practicing for a little concert, a preschool concert, singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And in an off time, not during the show, not during the practice, but at a whole totally different time when she was in her class, and most of the kids were napping, it was like a nap time, because it's a preschool class. She was playing, and I was talking to her, engaging her, and she had a little star in her hand. I'm like, what's that? And she started to sing, not clearly, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. So I heard the rhythm, and then I called the teacher over, and I'm like, listen. And we just started to celebrate and laugh because we started to sing with her. Those were her first words that we'd ever heard her was singing. And when I asked her mom, does she say words at home? Does she say mama? Does she say dada? Mom says nothing. She doesn't say anything. I said, did you hear her singing in the car? She said, I heard her. Those were her first words. So do not discount music, and that repetition of music, because that somehow connected in her brain, connected in her processing, connected in her language. And she had a star in her hand when she was singing it. The teacher, there was this little toy star. So she knew exactly what a Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star was, because she was singing it to the star.
And this wasn't something that we were practicing and repeating and doing over and over.
It was spontaneous.
Almost spontaneous on her end.
Because she had been singing, she was singing it, practicing it in music. They have little music in music class, singing it. But the connection when she came into the class was totally different. She was kind of playing around and came across this little toy stand. Then I heard her, I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I think I immediately videotaped her, sent it to Miss Marley. I'm like, look at this. Because that was a celebration. It was a celebration for us as teachers, and it was definitely a celebration when we shared it with our parents.
Wonderful.
Sorry.
Wonderful. So we definitely celebrate those victories. Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to pull Jeanette, I so love saying your name, into the conversation again. And so let's think about it, you know, a question that popped up for sure. In inclusive settings where we have children with autism who have challenges with holding pencils, essentially the sensory, the feel of holding the pencil, holding the writing instruments. What are some things that teachers or parents can do to support these children?
That's a good question. So you're saying that they don't want to hold the pencil?
They do not want to hold a pencil.
Okay, so just something I always tell parents, don't let your children be on technology at all. I think that's limited a lot of problems, or it's increased a lot of problems with holding a pencil. But if it's a sensory thing, you want to introduce them to different areas. If it's a sensory thing, you want to introduce them to different feels to get them involved. If it's squeezing putty, or if it's squeezing Play-Doh, and those things, you can even make your homemade Play-Doh. You don't have to go out and buy it. You can make that at home. You can put food coloring, and you can use that to squeeze, because you want to, if they don't want to hold the pencil, you don't want to force them to hold the pencil, but you want to bring in other sensory activities. It could be playing with shaving cream if they're concerned about that. It could be playing with sand, taking a little wooden stick if you're at the beach and using that to write on the sand. And that's the same movement that you'd have in the same position that you'd hold the pencil. So I always tell parents to play. Children, their work is play. So they should be involved in their environment as much as possible and, you know, participate in those things. So, you know, that essentially, if they're squeezing the putty, if they're playing with the sand and using a little stick, you know how we used to, you know, write in the sand and write your name, you know, those are all the same movements. And we should have young children participating in their natural environment as much as possible.
Wonderful, thank you. What about older children though? So let's say 12, 13. I'm just wondering, is there a point at which some discomfort will have to be had in terms of helping them to move to the next level, or the level of being able
it
to
depends, function? You know, if they're sometimes we talk about grasp, you know, if you're talking about an older child with their pencil grasp and it's a poor pencil grasp, you can provide activities for that. If what you want to, if you're concerned about how they're holding their pencil, as long as it's not affecting the legibility of their handwriting, and their hand is not fatigued, it's not an issue. But you know, that's a broad question, because I don't know if it's sensory, if it's fine motor, because you know, doing things, playing with little cubes, things to connect, strengthens the hands. But then I don't know if it's a sensory component. So, and then I don't know if when they're writing, is it legible? You know, because then that could be a whole other issue. So I guess just honing in on what the specific issue is. Is it just the way they're holding the pencil, or is it that it's a sensory issue, or that they have a weak pencil grasp? So
let's take it from the standpoint of being a sensory issue.
Again, it's just providing different ways. It's the same thing that you would do with a smaller child. You'd be presenting them with different, because if it's a sensory issue, they're having probably other sensory issues. So it's just, again, providing that input in small amounts throughout the day. So they're kind of desensitized to that. And you want to keep, you know, and you don't want to overwhelm them. I have a student that doesn't want to have anything to do with sand, and I'll give him a little cup so then he doesn't have to touch the sand, but it's at least getting him to that next step. So small gradual steps to get them there.
Okay, thank you. So is there a point when you probably want to look at using augmentative devices or
Well,
technology of the sort to help?
yes, you want to look at technology. The technology is, I find, for children that are having issues with writing, that it's not legible. I haven't come across a child that has sensory issues that doesn't want to hold a pencil, but it is possible. So yes, you would look at technology for that as well. You can have something text to speech, it just depends, or using a word processor for them to type their words or sentences.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, because we're looking at written communication as well, right? Now, let's look at another question from the chat, but just before I jump to that, I just want to remind you to complete the Google Forms that are being circulated. So the link is being circulated in the group. So remember, this is the information that we'll use to send you wonderful resources. All right, so let's look at what Andrew is saying. So Andrew says that, he says, how do you handle aggression, hitting, self-injurious behavior in a 9-year-old child with autism? So how do you handle aggression, hitting, or self-injurious behaviors?
I'm wondering, and I'm sure Ms. Santiago can speak to this. I'm just wondering, again, when we talk about any behavior, self-injurious behaviors, what's the antecedent? And when I say antecedent, what's causing that before the behavior? You know, you have to determine the setting, the time, you know, how often is it happening? I don't know if they're in the classroom environment. As an example, maybe they're sitting down at their desk too long. They haven't had a movement break. And that's something maybe the teachers need to be aware of, that we have to determine why that behavior, what's coming before that behavior, what's triggering that behavior.
And what's coming after.
Well, yeah, and the after will be the consequence, right? But we want to see why he's doing that. Ms. Santiago, you can speak.
Yeah, I know. With all of that, there is always a function to a behavior, is what Ms. Guzman-Davis is saying. So whenever we are taking data in the schools, in the class, for whatever behavior it is, that is the very first thing we do is, they call it, we have an ABC checklist. That is always okay, let's figure out what's going on. And that's all it is. It's antecedent, behavior, consequence. What happens before the behavior, what happens during the behavior, and what happens right after. And again, the reason we do it is to see what is the function, what is the pattern that is doing it. Is it that every time the child is presented with work, is it that they're like, oh no, I'm not doing work, so they say, I'm going to hit myself, I'm going to do this, is it that every time you take the child into a loud place that they do it? So it can be how do you handle it, it depends on why is it happening. So the first thing you have to find out is, why is it happening? Then after you find out why is it happening, then you can think about some strategies of how to handle it. Let's say it is something to do with work in the classroom. Let's say that every time it's time to do math, the child begins to have behavior. So we notice that every time math comes, he's getting miserable, getting this, getting cranky, starts hitting himself. Then I might put in something like, first, a simple thing, which is like a first then. So I might say to the child, or we're using our visuals. Let's use writing, since I have a writing visual. I need you to do your writing, and then you're going to get to choose whichever one of these you want. So I would have known, or the teacher would have known, that this child loves stories and loves to take a break, but hates writing. So I might use something as simple as this. Just do this. I just need you to write, and I may start again with one thing, one letter, just your name, you start very small. And then I'd say, do this, and then you're going to get that. That is if it has something to do with work. But again, if the behavior had something to do with a setting, it would be like maybe avoiding that setting if it can be avoided, if it's something that's so uncomfortable for them, or if it's something that's loud noises, I might give them the headphones to cover their ears. So that question to that answer to that question is very broad, because we have to figure out what is the function, why are they doing it. That's the first thing. And without figuring out the why, then we can't figure out how we're going to fix it. But I would say the first thing to do is observe the antecedent, observe exactly what happens before that behavior. That's how I would say.
And Ms. Santiago, to jump in, this can also tie all the way back around to the zones of regulation we were talking about.
Yeah.
If it is a child who is verbal, we can try to get them to tell us where you are, what you're feeling, what emotion are you exhibiting right now, and then we can work into the why.
Thank you so much. So remember, we want to do our very best to take control of our noise, okay? All right, so considering that we have just touched a little bit on writing, or it was mentioned a little, Deborah, let's look at this now. So there's a question that came in that is linked to some responses that were given earlier, but I think it will require a little bit more of an extended explanation, as it were. So this particular parent, let me bring up her name so I can acknowledge her. It's Tamika Sinclair. So she says, my question is, what can I do to help my son with comprehension? He will read the story and can answer all your questions. Okay. But when he's required to put it on paper, he does not know what to write. Now, this child will be going to high school or transitioning to high school. And so what are some strategies that will be helpful to Tamika and other parents who are dealing with those challenges at this time?
So this child maybe has it here, can answer it, but that kind of fear writing it to get it from here down on the paper. And so I would say, as a educator, to use some kind of a, again, visual, what do you call it? Mapping, mapping where it's modeling, or let's say, again, everything here for me is a visual. Okay, let's talk about the characters. Who are the characters? And maybe have something like this. Where is the setting? What is the events that happen? So let's say we're starting with something like this. Then from there, you're going to maybe walk him through it. What was the question? What did they ask? Da, 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 da. And I would model. I would sit probably with the first few ones. I would show him how to do it. Okay, the question was, where did it take place and what happened? Da, da, da. So I said, where did it take place? And he says, oh, it took place at the beach. All right, so we're going to put setting as a beach. So I use this as like a guide, and then I would probably model it with him a few times. Then after that, I might dial back and say, okay, you know how to write a setting because I showed you. Let's look back on the ones we did before. So, and then, so he has his own samples of the work that you did together to refer, because it is kind of intimidating if you're asking him to take it from here to put it here and there's nothing to show me how to do it. So as a teacher, and as any good teacher, whether it's no matter what kind of class, inclusion, regular class, a good teacher would model what you want the students to write. So I would say I would model how to do it. And I would use with my students with autism, I definitely would use additional like visuals and story mapping type things to help them to kind of just take away that fear of putting it on the paper.
And even underlining, like you're saying, using additional things, underlining in the story, because if they're able to answer the question, then they can find it in the story. And to start, then it's just a simple copying from story to paper, but at least they have that visual there.
And maybe you start the first time you do it, you write it, and then you say, okay, I wrote it, now you copy what I wrote. Maybe the first time they need that crutch. And then you dial back a little bit. All right, I'll help you start it off, but I want you to finish the sentence. I'll start it off for you, and you start it off, and you allow them to finish it. So you kind of take them to like a gradual comfort level of it might be just an anxiety that I don't think I can write the answer. It could be just an anxiety. Everything can be tied in, that whole emotional thing can be playing into the writing right here. Because maybe this is where his anxiety comes in. Maybe this is where if you pick up the zone of regulations, where he's going to show you red, or he's going to show you yellow, which is like doubt. He's going to show you different emotions that he could be experiencing, fear, doubt that he's going to get it wrong. It's like it's like a constantly observation, and like a detective kind of, the teacher and the parent is like that person who is always, you're trying to figure out what are they thinking, what do I need to help them to get to the next step.
Wonderful. Now, when you think about meltdowns, so that's another question that was posted in the chat. What are some tips to manage meltdown? So I know we spoke about paying attention to the functions of the behavior. So paying attention to what happens before and certainly what happens after. So tell us, what are some practical things that we can do?
Again, what is a meltdown too? And then when is the melt? Like a child can have, so you have meltdown, you have tantrums. So, and sometimes it's intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
And a tantrum, just to do a little clarification, a tantrum is like, I want this and I want it now, and I'm going to scream and shout for it. But a meltdown is the one that could be that whole anxiety of anything or fear of something. And I'm so uncomfortable in my own skin that I'm going to just scream and cry. So again, the meltdown, is it sensory? Again, you always, even with a meltdown, you have to see when it's happening and why it's happening, and then you can treat it. Because I have some who I can tell you, all I have to do is, and these are a lot of my inclusion students really sometimes have meltdown over what? They'll have meltdowns over, I'm going to give you examples just from this week, doing a computer program that they have to do on the computer and not being able to finish it. And the teacher says, stop. That's enough for meltdown because he wants to complete it and it may take 20 minutes to get him back. So in this case, this is a child in an inclusion classroom and a teacher has tried to redirect him. It's okay. But he's so upset that he didn't get to finish it that he can't recoup. And for that child, I said, let's go for a walk. Go and take him for a walk. He gets a break, a sensory break, because he's now got himself all angst up because he didn't finish it. And while he's on the sensory break and while he's talking and just breathing, I'm saying, no, it's okay if you don't finish your story, because you know what? Tomorrow you can finish. And I'm talking him through it like you're doing a little therapy session. So you're talking through it. It's okay. When you go back to class, you're going to get a break. You're going to have to go to lunch, but when you come back from lunch, then you're going to be able to finish it. So in this particular meltdown, in this particular case, he just needed a break. And he just needed it.
And sometimes those breaks, taking them out of the situation, that's all it is. Maybe they're having a meltdown in their classroom. Just taking them outside into the hallway restarts them and presses the restart. And then they're okay. So taking a walk and taking a break is normally a really good restart.
Especially in the school setting. So for many of the children who are probably in really inclusive school settings, but not easy for them to cope in those settings can be overwhelming. It's 20, 25 kids talking loud and the teacher is moving fast, and it can be overwhelming if they're like, okay, take out your book, take out your... So they may require a little space in the back of the class to take a breather, or a little somebody to come and give them a little walk to kind of refresh, reboot, and come back in. So
wonderful, thank you. All right, so I want to look, wonderful. That's someone taking control of the noise, thank you. All right, so I want to look a little bit at planning structural play dates, all right? So planning structural play dates. So how does that help? How can that help with the development of communication skills? And how can that help with the development of motor skills? Can that help any at all? Jeanette, let's talk about the motor skills first. Can that help? And then let's look at communication skills. So
absolutely. It's a social skill as well. And well, Ms. Brenner, you could talk about the social skill, but we do that too. So with the motor skills, for instance, if the parent has a play date and they want to plan it at the park, and they get the kids involved in that, even having a simple ball, that's kicking the ball of their peer, that's throwing the ball of their peer, that's all hand-eye coordination, that's motor planning. You have to know the sequence of steps. If you're going to roll the ball to your friend and your friend's going to kick it, those are all sequence of movements that you are practicing and you're having fun. And that's what kids should be doing. And they're learning while they're playing and sharing and reciprocating.
While you're playing, you can learn, yes,
I'm all about play.
Absolutely.
Play is all about learning. I'm a big advocate for play.
There's a lot going on with playing, actually. A lot going on. Turn taking, sharing, talking, communicating.
And even nonverbal kids who are playing together, we as adults may not understand them, but they may understand each other. There's plenty of times I walk into a classroom and two nonverbal children are fully playing together in their own language, having a full discussion, and they're getting along. And you know what? That gives you the social aspect. It gives them the playing. It gives them everything that they need. And just because we don't understand, it doesn't mean that they're not progressing.
Thank you. So two hands have been raised, and I want to jump to those. So I'm seeing iPad. I'm not sure who is iPad, but if you're raising your hand and you're using an iPad, it's your time now. So go right ahead, please.
I hear already discussing about schools. In my country, I am in Dominica, we have no schooling for children like my son. He's 15 years and everything is on me. And he's not speaking. He used it toilet when he potty when he ready, but when he have his own mind, he make mess as usual. But it don't have no help here for us in Dominica for children. So it's like I don't even know how to help him in some ways, because sometimes he will communicate certain ways, like he will speak, like if he wants something, or he will push me, but he cannot speak. So I don't know really how to handle it. And we have no doctors here for them. You don't have no school. You don't have nowhere. You can even put him for it. It's just a whole mess. So it's like we just on our own right here now. So I don't know what to do. I don't even understand. He's 15 years and I still don't understand. I don't know what to do. And no help at all. So it's very hard. So I don't even know how to explain it to you. I are doctors, so all certain things that happen in their mind. But although I'm a parent, he's 15 years, but sometimes I don't know what's happening in his mind. I don't know what to do. It's just very hard right now. Not easy at all.
Thank you so much for that question and for being so open and honest. And I am sure that there's so many among us who may be having similar challenges. So I'm going to turn this over.
So what I was hearing, I didn't hear everything clearly, but so your child is not in school because wherever she is, there's no schools for her child. And so everything is online and he doesn't talk. I got that piece of, that is a tough challenge.
She's saying there's no resources like in the school for that. Like we were saying with visuals,
you have to start with visuals. Create
your own visuals.
And so to communicate, she said to create your own visuals. It could be even, like I said, taking the pictures are probably the best way, or if you have a computer, going to Google Images. Where else is a good place where parents could get visuals?
If she has the iPad, I believe there's probably an app there on the iPad where you could get visuals, because it might be too much for her to go get that printed. But I believe there is.
Actually, there are free apps on the iPad for communication. It might not be extensive, but there are still apps out there.
There's one called Visuals to Go that I have. It's called Visuals and the number 2 and Go. That can help her with that. But I mean, I know her it seems like way deeper, where she there's no schools that are, well, the hope is that more and more with the autism outreach as such as this, that more and more in the upcoming years that our Caribbean countries will catch up and will start offering trainings for teachers, schools to accommodate that. But for right now, I would say to the communication part to start with the pictures so we can at least point to the pictures in the home to help him communicate.
Thank you.
Like in the Caribbean, I'd turn it to like what would we say we could offer her like right now? Like within, I'm not sure where she was. I'm not sure if she was from
she's actually in Dominica. She's in Dominica.
Okay.
She is in Dominica. I did not get your name though. I'm here calling you iPad. Please tell me your name.
My name is Suwana. My name is
Suwana.
Suwana Benjamin.
Okay, Suwana, just make sure you complete the Google Forms, and we are going to do our best to see how we can reach out and offer as much support.
My daughter doesn't know more of those stuff, but she's at work. She give me the connection to get to you, but if she doesn't know more about those stuff.
Oh, she's the one that will, okay. All right, so at the end, okay, so what I will ask you to do at the end of the session, Suwana, is to just hang around, all right? And
yes.
we will get your contact details then. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you so much for that question.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Sharon Anderson. I'm a grandmother to a 4-year-old. And I'm very concerned because he's super hyperactive. And there are times when he speaks that I don't understand. For me, it's just pure gibberish. But there are some things that he will say clearly and other things that he will indicate to you by taking you to it, pointing you to it. There are some things that he will not express himself with, like he will not say he wants to go to the bathroom. He won't ask for help, but he will seek to help himself. So he'll pull things along to climb up to reach what he wants. He will go to the bathroom. Yet when he goes to school, he will not say he wants to do it. He would wet himself. You'd have to take him to the bathroom. And I am sometimes very, very overwhelmed with the fact that, you know, this could be a challenge to others. Thank God he has, his teachers are you know, caring and really pay that. But I would like for him to get to the point, and I don't know if I'm expecting too much from him as a 4-year-old. I heard you speak to the fact that the devices, he's hooked to his tablet. He's eating and he sets it up in front of him to eat. He will not hold a pencil. And those are some, because I've listened to the conversation. He won't hold the pencil. You hold his hand to make circles or to color, but he's looking somewhere else. So he put it outside of the area and that sort of thing. And he has been referred to the autism clinic for assessment. However, I think it is slow in coming. One of our challenge here is that the available facilities for these assessments to be done takes forever. And, you know, just want to know how much more I can do to help him while he's home, because I'm sure school is doing what they will have to do. Thank you.
So I think that just like Ms. Santiago was saying before, a first then chart. If he loves his iPad and that is what gets him going, that's what his reward can be. So even Ms. Santiago has one nicely printed, but you can even just do it on paper simply like this. First then, here's his iPad, and whatever he needs to do first can be written there. So it doesn't need to be something fancy to print out. It can be something you just write on a piece of paper. But if his iPad is what he works for, then maybe you can get him to do that work first.
And I would say to the parent to limit the iPad. So it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. However, anything in excess is not too good. So I would say that instead of just having, you know, making him just be on the iPad during dinner time, like, you know, you'd say, maybe at home, you might want to make a little schedule. This is what we're going to do at home. Again, it could be little pictures, or it could be, you can just draw stick figures if you want. We're going to, when you come to our website, when he's with you, when you're at grandma, we're going to have lunch. We're going to have, you can do a lunch, whatever it is. Then you're taking a bath, or dinner, bath. Then you have 5 minutes iPad. So you're telling him, you're giving him a little structure to kind of get him more in a routine, but also limiting the iPad. And when I use the limiting, sometimes we use like timers sometime, or I use even the iPhone thing where they can see the orange thing counting down. Like
Right.
the iPad, you can get it for 10 minutes and you set the timer. So when 10 minutes is up, that's it. iPad time finish. You said you use the bathroom at home, but you're not using the bathroom at school, correct?
Yes, he won't ask for help, or he won't say that he would like to use the bathroom or something. He won't say it.
Right.
So he wears a Pampers, because I understand he is 4 years old and he has been to force. You find that when you have a class of 20 children and a teacher has no assistant, then that person is not going to be able to give him the attention he needs, and he would also be just messing himself. So the time to go clean him up and all that sort of thing. But he's now at a school that he has the less students are in the class, so he gets a more individual attention. He also has an officer who works with him individually, because I had him assessed at the early childhood simulation unit, and the different tests and assessments are being done. So I think he'll get there. However, I am very concerned that at 4, I never had that with my own children, but at 4, he's not saying, I'd like to use the bathroom, I want to pee, I want to number 2, that sort of thing. He won't say it, right? Recently, I noticed that he's going to the bathroom on his own while he's home, but he still want to even ask you to clean him. He'll just tell you that I use the potty.
And then you instead of I'm an over visual person, but honestly, at the school, if you have a look up picture of the thing, and he might be shy to say it to the teacher, but maybe you talk to his teacher and him, or the teacher talk to him and say, whenever you want to use the bathroom, just bring me this little picture and hand it to me. And he might feel comfortable. He might feel comfortable with just taking it to her, but he might be very afraid to like go in front of everybody, raise them hand. But if you just say, if she says it to him, and you're with her, or if you're with, even better. But if the teacher has a relationship with him and say, this little picture of the toilet, whenever you feel like you want to use it, just bring it to me, and then you can go straight to use it. That might work, because it might take away some of the anxiety of asking to use the bathroom in front of other children. Since he's able to do it at home, the fact that you tell him he's able to do it at home, it might be just a little anxiety thing at the school.
Thank you so much. I think that was an excellent response. So we are coming to the close of our session almost. All right. So I noticed that we have 1, 2, 3 hands up, and then there's a question in the chat that I'm going to go to. And I just want to assure you all that I know that we weren't able to get to all of the questions that you had tonight, but we will be very diligent, and we'll go through the chat, and we look at the questions that were not responded to, and we'll do the best that we can to communicate that information. And who knows, perhaps some of these questions will be answered in the autism booklet that has been launched. So you may never know. It's not wonderful. But let's get to this question real quickly. And thank you again. Thank you very much for that question. Wonderful. So this parent says, and this is ZT Blake, my child stopped talking. My child started talking and stopped altogether for more than a year now. What could be the possible cause, and how can I get him to speak again?
And how old is the child, I wonder?
That's a good question. How old is the child? ZT Blake. So just type it in the chat.
The child is 5 years old.
5 years old. Thank you so much.
Was saying like words and I was talking sentences. I've heard many parents tell me, I've heard many parents tell me that their child was saying words 18 months, 24 months, but usually around 3, gonna have to be the notice that they stop talking.
Right, call out and listen.
A variety of external things. I mean, did it start school? Did a new sibling come into play? Did they move? It really mainly needs to, just like everything else we've been saying, we need to pinpoint why this action happened and not, you know, what we can do to change it, because it might not be an immediate change. In time, just like the child stopped talking, they may start again.
Yeah, so what happened before that? What is there, like anything that happened like in a family setting that was kind of could have been traumatizing, or you know, sometimes it's.
Well, thank you. So we can try and look at what led to that behavior. All right, to see if we can find a function for it. All right, thank you so much for that question as well. And thank you for those responses. So Alcatel 3T8, you may go ahead now. And then I will take Jody and Francis.
Am I being heard clearly?
Yes, yes, go right ahead.
All right, so for my son, he is not potty. We're trying to potty train him. However, he is afraid to poo in both the diaper and in the toilet. It is almost painful to watch him try to poo in any of whether the diaper or in the potty. We're not sure. I was wondering if I should take him to the doctor. It's just, you know, really painful to watch him try to poo. It's almost as if he's afraid to poo.
Do you think it's a medical thing? Could it be a medical? If it's like you say, it's in the diaper, he's afraid, as well as in the potty. I wonder if it's something that is very uncomfortable for him. Have you checked it with the pediatrician?
I've tried consulting the pediatrician, and they have directed me to take him to therapy. But because of COVID and everything, we haven't been able to get an appointment for him just yet. But we have been trying at home to see what the problem is to get him to poo on the potty. He cries on the potty. He doesn't want to go. He keeps it in, almost strange, just to not let it go.
Can you think of, is there anything you can think of that she could try with you, right?
We try to reassure him to let him know that it's okay. Even he doesn't want to go in the diaper. He doesn't want to go on the potty. So we're not even sure what to do anymore.
Because I mean, this is like, but even have you tried like reinforcing? If you do your poop, you're gonna get your, you know, like a reinforcement. Like
we've tried many rewards. We tried
with rewards. So then it seems to me that the rewards that it could be really a medical kind of therapy type of thing. If he's so uncomfortable, I wonder if it does hurt him. You know, that's when it's like that. Then sometimes I think it might be medical or sensory.
You know what the concern is, that it's like a vicious cycle, because he doesn't want to, then it exacerbates the situation, and then that becomes more painful for him. It sounds, I think, but you said you've already taken him to the doctor, and they said to take him to therapy. What kind of therapy?
They told me that it's not in their area, that they won't be able to help me. So what they have all recommended is like stuff to soften the stool, but we've realized that it's not a problem where the stool is hard. It's not hard because we've given him various stuff like fiber and mineral oil and stuff to soften. But it's not a point where the stool is soft. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's soft. It's just I'm not sure if it's sensory, where it's a feeling that he doesn't want to endure, but he just doesn't want to get it out at all.
It might be just weird for him that something comes out there. You know, it could be just a weird thing that, like, oh, this is so, you know, feeling that why is this coming out here? Interesting, what can be.
Yes, thank you so much for those responses. You see, real issues, and I mean,
it's like a troubleshooting to figure out.
That was a little tricky.
First you go medical, then is it sensory? Try the reinforcements that don't work. You know, you could try the social story and explaining to him. You know, it's sometimes just kind of like a trial and error.
Until we figure it out. Thank you so much. Now we only have time for one more question today, but as I indicated, just type your questions in the chat. And for the questions that we didn't have the opportunity to respond to, we will definitely do our best to reach out in providing you those responses. And I'm noticing that in the chat, you know, we have some questions that align with things that were discussed earlier, because I know some persons would have joined in a little later. So just remember that this will be made available on our YouTube channel, this recording. So you'll have the opportunity to go back and watch. And then I remind you again about the autism booklet that was launched. You may be surprised that certainly many of the questions that you have can and will be answered in or with that booklet. All right, so very quickly, Karen Roberts, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, please. Good night. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, I'm so excited. I'm happy that you guys have this session for us. It is really informative. I am an educator and I have a child who's autistic. She's 9 years old. Due to COVID, I had the opportunity to stay home and work with her. My question though is, how do you classify or categorize a child as being nonverbal, verbal and nonverbal? Nonverbal, yes. And the other question is, how do you cope with a child who is constantly ripping books and papers? As I said before, I am a teacher, so you know, books, those are tools. So I'm having a challenge with that. My daughter rips books and papers. I don't know if you can help me with those. Thank you.
Mario, want to speak to the verbal and nonverbal question?
Can you repeat what the nonverbal and verbal question was?
Okay, yes, I would like for you to give a definition or to categorize those two, differentiate. Reason being, my child was not saying any word at all, but due to COVID, I had the time to work with her. I set up her little corner and I had her things that I worked along with her. She is now saying a few words. She is identifying letters, making the sound. She is singing, even though it is not as clear as, but I know she's singing the songs. She knows the ABC. She's even doing Spanish now. And I don't know, I can hear the uno, dos, tres, cuatro, etc. So she doesn't really ask me for things. She will just pull me to whatever she wants. She's potty trained because she goes by herself. She is showing vast improvement, of which I am elated. You can actually hear it in my voice. I am super excited.
You should be very proud.
Yes, 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 I'm working with her. And so the other thing I would like to know, I would like to be a part of a group where we can share best practices so that we can work together to help each other to overcome this thing, because I know it's very frustrating. Thank you.
So I would say with the nonverbal and verbal, sounds like she's verbal, she's making her sounds, she's singing her songs, she's bringing you to what she wants. She knows, she's aware of what she wants, and so she's guiding you there. She might not be physically verbalizing what she wants, but she is guiding you to the location or to the item. So we do classify that as verbal. I would say nonverbal is zero communication skills, not able to take you to what they want, not able to point and you know, tell you what's going on with them. There are, of course, varying levels. We can have a verbal child who uses a device and communicates solely through that. They may not be making any sounds, but they are communicating through that. And so it really is a wide range. But nonverbal, we would really classify as no speaking, no expressing themselves in any form, whether it be verbal or pointing or grabbing or things like that.
Thank you so much. This has been such an informative session. And I almost feel like we could go on and on and on and on. Now, we're going to wrap up, considering that we're on the whole topic of nonverbal communication, and chats have been blowing up so much. This question is from Veronica, and she says, do you believe a 4-year-old nonverbal child with autism who comprehends instructions and does academics should be introduced to sign language? And I think that's an excellent question to end with. So yeah, let's talk about it.
It's an amazing question to end with. I would say it doesn't hurt, even if it's not the full speaking of sign language, but simple things that parents or adults or teachers or siblings can use. Very, very basic signs are always helpful in getting a child to begin their communication process.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So to our wonderful participants, I want to remind you to complete the Google Forms in the chat. And just before I turn over to Ms. Matthews, I want to remind Sue, I hope I get this right. Suyana from Dominica, right, to remain behind, all right, after the session ends, so that we can get your contact details, okay? Well, thank you so much to our panelists. You have been amazing, absolutely amazing. And we are really grateful for all the information, all the knowledge that you've poured into us. And we are definitely sure that our parents will really, and our teachers will really have an opportunity to do some great stuff by applying those things. So I will now turn the time over to Ms. Matthews. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to reiterate Mrs. Johnson's grand statements and on behalf of the Microcare Center, and give an extra hearty thank you to our panelists, Ms. Renard, Mrs. Santiago, and Mrs. Guzman Davis. Thank you again for joining us. We have enjoyed our partnership over the last couple of months, and want to thank you for taking the time to share your expertise with us. We are also warmed by the support provided to us by our partners, Hospital and Caribbean Autism Support for Education, as well as other agencies that have helped us to execute these sessions with their time and skill, right? Please remember to complete the Google form, as we have reiterated many times tonight. But it's very important that we are able to contact you so that we can provide these resources that are very much needed directly to you, without having to hope that you see it somewhere in our promotion. And finally, we want to thank our attendees for taking the time to share your challenges with us so that we can provide the support we'd like to offer and know more about what's going on, so that we can facilitate the development of information, the development of interventions to inform the context that we're currently in. So thank you all and good night.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Good night.